Okay. All right. Okay. Greetings, greetings. We are live. I am Crystal Denise, of course, and I am so excited about tonight. But first, I need to apologize because I did not come on live last month. I was scheduled to talk about our grand ancestor, Anna Julia Cooper, and some things with life got in the way. So I will be revisiting her because I think she's important as one of our greatest voices in the liberation struggle. So I will be coming back to Mama Anna Julia Cooper, uh, maybe in February, March, probably March, because February is dedicated to the Barudis and the complementarity book. So let me apologize for that because I'm trying to stay consistent because we need to study our people, our ancestors, our history, so that we can understand what's going on today and be equipped to define and create a future that's conducive to our survival. And before I introduce my special guest, I do want to remember our ancestors. And when I was thinking about a specific person, I really started thinking about Baba Amzi Moore. He is one of the people we'll probably be touching on tonight. And because a couple years ago at the library during Black History Month, I wanted to focus on, and I always try to focus on Mississippi people because I have fallen in love with the state. And I created this map. It's the state of Mississippi. I don't know if you can see the whole thing, but it has significant people, places, and events. And it was when I was doing research that I discovered Baba Amzi Moore. And then when I was looking at his dates, it said September 23rd. And I was amazed because that is my day. And so I felt so honored, and I still feel honored to share the day with Baba Amzi Moore. So if you are here, I'm at the Culture Center in Coldwater. You want to visit, this map is on display, and it has some people we may talk about tonight. There's Baba Alfred Skip Robinson on there. Yeah, one of my favorites that I have come to love and admire. There's Mayor Chugwe Lumumba, Mama Cleopatra Davenport Thompson of the Egypt Okolona area that I learned about while I was doing research for this map. Baba Lerone Bennett Jr., Baba Aaron Henry, just a lot of people that we don't really know and we should know. And I'm also working on a project so that we can come to know these people. And it's going to be titled Mississippi Goddamn in a good way because we have so much rich cultural history here in the state. So I just wanted to remember our ancestors. Some of them we'll be talking about tonight. So tonight, I had the honor, the privilege, and the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Akinyele Umoja. I met Dr. AK, Baba AK, uh, uh, last year, a little over a year ago.
2021, yeah.
Yeah. So Brother Patrick Lumumba, he had gotten a hold of his book, We Will Shoot Back. And he was just so excited to read about the people, places, and events in the book. And he was like, Crystal, we got to get Baba to the summit. We have to get him here. So we did everything we could, and we had Baba here at the summit last year. And I tell you, it was great. It was great. And so I was thrilled to meet you. I was honored to meet you, and I'm honored to have this discussion tonight. But let me introduce you all to him. That some of you all may not know him, some of you may. Baba Akinyele Umoja, is a scholar activist and founding member of the New African People's Organization and the Malcolm X grassroots movement, affectionately known as Baba AK. Umoja is currently a professor of Africana Studies at Georgia State University and is the author of the award-winning book, We Will Shoot Back, Armed Resistance and the Mississippi Freedom Movement. Umoja also served as a co-editor of another award-winning 2-volume Black Power encyclopedia that he gifted us here at New Direction Culture Center last year, published in 2018. Bobby Umoja has been an activist and organizer for well over 5 decades, primarily as an advocate for reparations, the freedom of political prisoners, and solidarity of the Black liberation movement with people across the globe fighting for human rights and freedom from oppression. Welcome, Baba. I'm so excited.
Man, I feel blessed to be here with you, Sister Crystal. And I just want to throw my solidarity and just a salute to the Shea Academy and brothers and sisters of the Mississippi Black Liberation Movement. Doing great work.
Thank
Based
you
out of
so much.
Coldwater, Mississippi.
Yes.
Yeah.
And many times when I tell people where I live, they don't know where it is. So I kind of had to give them a geographic lesson, like 30 minutes from south of Memphis. And Tunica is a hot spot now. So I say in about 45 minutes east of Tunica. So it's an interesting place to be. And I've been here for 18 years now. And I tell you, I learn something new every day about the state, and it's great information. I think that when I maybe was out when I was about 10 years in, I made a post and said, Mississippi is low, this feared, is has this stigma attached to it, and it's rightly earned. But I've met some magnificent people here, and I've
Well,
learned about some even more wonderful people.
my spiritual father, in fact, he did this portrait just behind me. He said
Hmm.
Mississippi was a holy land. He wasn't born there. He was born in Tennessee. And so he felt that Mississippi was very important. Of course, I'm a little biased. My father was born there. My grandfather was buried in Tunica. And so, I never formerly lived in Mississippi. It has an important place in my spirit, in my soul, and which is why I was blessed to write the book on it. We will shoot back on resistance, Mississippi Freedom Movement. But if people don't know where Coldwater is, next year, 2023, I know in the fall, the Black Liberation Movement is going to be doing another power summit there. So it might be a good opportunity for you to
Yes.
come and see the work that's been happening down there.
Definitely. This past September, we had it at a newly owned Black business in Senatobia. So we were in Senatobia, Kemet Coffee, and it's an exceptional
Wow.
place. So the next time you visit, we'll have to go to Kemet Coffee so you can see
Okay.
this wonderful, wonderful safe space.
That's what I'm
that you-
talking about, growth and development.
Yes.
Yeah.
A young Black couple opened it up in September. So we were fortunate to link up with them, and they provided their space for the summit. So it was a
That's what
wonderful
I'm
event.
talking about.
Mm.
Nation building. There you go. There you
Nation
go.
building. Yes. And we're also doing tutoring Tuesdays there as well. So
Ah,
yeah, Ashe Academy we're tutoring there every Tuesday from 4 to 6. So it's a great place. So
that's
you definitely
beautiful.
So you did mention that you have a fondness for Mississippi because that's where your family is from. And I read I think it's in the introduction that your
Yeah.
dad's family is from Alligator.
Yeah, my father was born in Bolivar County, Alligator, Mississippi. He's born in 1913.
Mm.
And then just in doing the research on the book, I didn't know that Marcus Garvey's organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Organization, had a chapter in Bolivar County. They used to have rallies back in the 20s of like 1,500 people. So you're talking about a rural area for those who don't know, and so gave me a little bit of pride. And also in that county, you have Mount Bayou,
Mm-hmm.
and which kind of, I think, kind of burst the civil rights movement. I would say the formal civil rights movement in Mississippi with the Regional Council of Negro Leadership. So I'm proud my family's from that county. My dad's from Alligator. Right near Alligator too was another town called New Africa. You
Yes, New Africa
community
Rose. See it
called
every
New
time I
Africa,
go to
yeah.
Arkansas.
Long before the Republic of New Africa. So a lot of times when we think about nationalism, I know the elder that's a part of the group, part of the Black Liberation Movement, said talks about pragmatic nationalism.
Yeah,
But
Baba
we
Q.
don't think about nationalism in the South and in Mississippi, in particular in rural areas. But our people were looking for some sort of self-determination. You see that through the example of Marcus Garvey's organization being there. You see that through folks naming their community New Africa in 18, late 1800s, as well as us building black towns like Mount Bayou and black organizations. That's all a part of this tradition. So what you all are doing with the Ashe Academy, Black Liberation Movement, the Power Summit is all continuation of folks were doing, since our people been here.
Hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. For those who don't know, Alligator is a small community between Cleveland and Clarksdale, as is Mount Bayou. Bob, I pass through there whenever I go to my hometown of Montrose, Arkansas. And so when I was reading the book and you were talking about the Arkansas Mississippi Delta, I'm from the Delta. So a lot of these spots like Greenville, I often tell people Greenville was like one of our major shopping points there in Arkansas. So I'm kind of familiar with that part of the state. And it's a different whole different kind of feel that way in the Delta.
Right, right, right,
Hmm.
right.
So I know you said that your family is from Mississippi, but what really inspired you to get this book going? I know some of it was from when you were writing your dissertation, maybe.
I started writing my dissertation, but I even carried back farther than that. And I talk about this in the book. And my dad told me this story when I was like maybe 13 years old, 13. Yeah, I had to be around 13. And he told me that they saw an alligator, a black man's body hanging from the water tower. And so
Right.
my grandfather was going to go get his rifle and shoot the first white man he saw. And the
Mm,
family tackled him and disarmed him because, they
mhm.
feared retaliation from the white folks.
Right.
And it tripped me out because I'm 68 now. So if I was 13 then, it had to be in the 60s, around 67, 68. And I had never heard of black people in the South having guns. I grew
Right.
up in Compton, California, and I never heard of them wanting to shoot some white folks. And so that kind of tripped me out, that my grandfather wanted to do that. But then that was that story. But then as I grew, I began to hear more and more stories. Stories from people like Sister Dara Bubakari, who was one of the presidents of the Republic of New Africa. And she talked about one time, her and her son Walter told me stories about in Birmingham, black people burying guns,
Mm,
doing the Birmingham thing in case they needed them later on, something breaking out. I'd never heard that. They told me about even during some of the nonviolent demonstrations that black people will be on the side with guns in case the Klan or other white supremacists were going to attack the people in the demonstrations. And just hearing those stories, and then of course, long before graduate school, I met somebody from Mississippi by the name of Alfred Skip Robinson. Skip Robinson, um, we heard about his movement called the United League of Mississippi. Um, and we invited him when I was in college. We invited him to Los Angeles to do a speaking tour, which we could hear about what was going on, but also to get them honorariums and funds for their movement. And for those who don't know, United League was founded in Marshall County, Mississippi, by a brother by the name of Skip Robinson, who had been a longtime civil rights activist, and another brother, Herbert Boyd. Uh, they primarily initially fought for like just not only desegregation and voting rights, but then they moved to like fight for eliminate poverty for black people to get, economic empowerment. But then they kind of flipped the script and wanted to utilize the tactic of boycotts, and they shut down a lot of towns. Dealing with boycotts, particularly the boycotts were oftentimes spurred by something that still occurs today: black people being killed by police, or either being killed in the jails or killed by police on the street, or some form of what we call police brutality. And they began to organize. They also fought for black people to get some land, and they would use any means necessary. So we brought him to California to speak, and that was the first time. The second time we brought him, the laws were different in terms of how you could fly on a plane. And he would have his 357 Magnum with him, and so sometimes he would pull his suit coat back, and you could see the 357 Magnum in his pants, stuck in his pants. But then I got to experience him. I believe it was in August of 1979. I decided I wanted to visit and see for myself. It was one thing to hear Skip Robinson speak. At that time, he was made chairman of the Democratic Party for Marshall County, which at that time was 75% black, but it had virtually no black elected officials. Because, with white people controlling the political machinery, you had dead people voting, you had people white people voting 2 or 3 times, things of that nature. So Skip being elected was a way to shut all that down, right? But what they did that morning of the election, when the polls opened, right before they opened, they arrested Skip and put him in jail. And then they released him when the polls closed. I was with him when he got released from jail, and we went to where the United League office was. And for those of you who are listening, if you've ever been to a small southern town, the right downtown is the county square where the courthouse, all that is. And so the United League office was right behind that. The brother who did security for Skip told Skip, look, I gotta leave now. I want to give you this gun. It was the same 357 Magnum that he had in California. And so he told him, look, I want to give it to you now. And let's go upstairs to the office so I can give it to you. Skip was like, nah, give it to me right here. I want people to know I got a gun. And so he was known to carry his gun. And then not only that, there was a time, and it's talked about in the book, where some young Klansmen tried to attack him, and he was able to defend himself. Not only that, they were able to catch the guy. So Skip was one of the baddest brothers I ever met. He just believed in talking self-defense, not only talking about it, but practicing it. You mentioned Okolona, another one of his soldiers, lieutenants, and leaders of the United League, was a brother from Okolona. Dr. I forget. Oh Lord, I'm forgetting his name right now.
Hey, Skip Robinson, it's a lot in here. It starts on 219, page 219, I believe. But I remember.
Yeah, but I'm talking about people I met too, because I did an interview with him.
Okay. Let me see. It was in Okolona, you said?
Yeah, Okolona. Dr. Howard Gunn. I'm sorry.
Okay.
For forgetting Dr. Howard Gunn. Dr. Howard Gunn was renowned not only because he was an educator, not only because he was an activist, but he was able to was ambushed by some Klansmen, and him and his son and some other young brothers ran them Klansmen off with some buckshot and other stuff. So the United League was pretty much about being prepared, about self-defense for black people, and it got to the point where, you know, actually those forces were scared of them. That's that last chapter of the book is really where I talk about the United League. And one of the things I think that Black people, because of the resistance and what had been built up by that time, white supremacy, at least in terms of open attacks on Black people, kind of declined in the state of Mississippi, which we know that that was a whole basis of white control of Blacks at that time, was the fear and intimidation that our people had to deal with, and you know, basically came from white terrorism. So
Right.
yeah, Skip Robinson was one of the another major inspirations for the book. Oh, so when I'm in graduate school, I know all this information I've learned from elders like Skip, but like Sister Dara and her son Walter, and just experiencing things myself, visiting in the South and knowing it's not the narrative that we were taught. You know, that there are two things that were promoted. One was the movement was exclusively nonviolent,
Right.
and even though nonviolent movement, it was very vital, but it's not the whole movement. And sometimes I think it might have been a minority of the movement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then that's one thing, and the other thing that was taught, that Black people were just afraid, intimidated, and weren't resisting and fighting back.
Right.
And there are some of us like that, but there's always been those of us who would fight back. And
Right.
so I'm in graduate school and I'm doing a paper in class. And a professor, I decided to do a paper in class, and the professor said, "Wow, that would be a great dissertation." I said, "Oh yeah, okay." So I went with it and made that my primary focus of my research, and then later on, now it's a book. And so, you know, I've just been blessed to meet certain elders, meet, you know, people who are now ancestors, and to
Mm-hmm.
be able to share our truth, and
Right.
that it's not to share with future generations. So that's so
And
why
and
I'm
it,
so glad that you all are focused, and you in particular focus your work on teaching the children. Um,
mm-hmm.
Now, I never met the person you mentioned before, Amzie Moore. I have
Mm-hmm.
had the blessing of meeting his son,
Oh.
who's a spitting image of
Mm-hmm.
Amzie. And but he's certainly one person. But usually when people talk about him, I'm talking about when he's talked about in books by scholars, they don't mention his role as somebody who believed in armed self-defense and practiced it.
Right.
Uh, that's generally not talked about. It's talked about his work in voter registration work. But for him, people like him, Medgar Evers, um, TRM Howard, and I'm glad that all of them are featured in some of the work that we have now coming out about Emmett Till,
Yeah.
because it was them who actually went into, I'm talking about Angie Moore and Medgar Evers specifically, now a sister by the name of Ruby Hurley, who dressed up like sharecroppers and got the data, got the evidence on what happened to Emmett Till. They were the
Mm-hmm.
ones who did that research and
Mm-hmm.
went in, but they were protected by Black men with shotguns while they went in to do that work. And so again, that's another part of the story. But Amzie Moore, who lived in Cleveland, Mississippi,
Mm-hmm.
uh, same county, Oliver
Right.
County
Oliver
again.
County. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he lived in Cleveland, Mississippi. Amzie, they said, and this was some of the white folks who went to his house to stay there to help with voter registration. They said when they went to the house, Amzie would, you know how good um, hospitable folk, you know, they offer you some water, they offer you, you know, spend the night, some toiletries or whatever, fresh pillowcases, but he'd offer you a piece, a gun, if you're gonna
Right.
stay with him, because he figured you were gonna need that, being in Mississippi at that particular time, being in the Delta. He was also known as a one-man protection agency because he protected folk and took them from place to place. And one of the things I was able to get was he was in discussions with people about forming a self-defense network throughout the state of Mississippi in the 1960s, and that was kind of motivated because they had found out the critical leaders were on a hit list by the Ku Klux Klan, and so
Mm-hmm.
they were going to have to protect folks. But yeah, now that's Baba Ramsey Moore, and Baba Ramsey Moore was kind of like very big brother. Uh, he was he was a veteran of the
Mm-hmm.
U.S. military, um, and he had a little bit more flexibility in organizing because he worked for the Postal Service. He wasn't working for like some of the local rednecks, if you will. And
Right.
then he also formed his own business, was supported by the NAACP and others through that network of starting his own gas station when he had the campaign to don't buy gas where you
Right.
can't use the restroom.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, he's one of those soldiers also.
Um, so I was listening to Charles Cobb interview a couple months ago, and this nonviolent stuff will get you killed. And you
Yes,
actually had it quite similar quote in your book when you speak about Baba Turnbow. Is it Turnbow? Yeah.
yeah, Harmon Turnbow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, Harmon Turnbow is the one that said that nonviolent stuff will get you killed.
Right. Right. When I thought about it, because when I was reading it, I was like, "Oh, I had that book at home." Because when I listened to the interview by Bob Charles Cobb, I said I need to get that book because I need to read it because he does speak of Bob Ramsey Moore in the book and how he carried a gun, and Kwame Ture spoke very highly of Bob Ramsey and his travels with him in the state. So there, like you said in your book, there the literature, the research, the it's not there like it should be. And you referenced a couple of books, and I think it's in the introduction. But when we find it, when I hear of it, I'm there trying to get the information so that I can, study it and teach it to our children and show the parallel or the significance of why this is important because it's still happening in a different way currently. So we need to be aware so that we won't be surprised and caught off guard, which I think happens a lot with us. But I do
I
want you
think
to
to
talk
some
about
degree,
some. Go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
just want to say to some degree, I think they were ready and aware at
Mhm.
that time. I think to
Right.
some degree we've fallen asleep.
All right. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's and I do believe that black people have more guns and are better armed today than they
Mhm.
were during the period of time I write about, but we weren't as armed with consciousness of
Right.
the reality of our situation. And I think that's why we're not as prepared as they
Right.
were during the time.
And it was and you pointed that out in the book as well when when you had the SNCC people come in, they were so adamant about nonviolence and the SCLC, and then you had people, the indigenous people that were dealt with the reality of living in this state and the covert racism, the stifling racism that they had to deal with. And EW Steptoe was one of those people that was like, "Hey, I ain't going. This is what the business is." So can you talk about him a little bit?
Oh my God. Yeah, he was a dairy farmer in Amite County, Mississippi. That's for those who don't know, and if you're geographically challenged, it's the southernmost, southwestern most county in the state of Mississippi. And it's right borders Louisiana. And so one of the things he would do, because of his involvement in voter registration and stuff, he would go down to Louisiana and do business and then, be active, politically active in Mississippi. Um, in fact, Ramsey Moore is the one that sent the initial SNCC people, and people might know the name of the great Bob Moses, who went to organize voter registration in Mississippi, was sent by the great Ella Baker. All these names should be esteemed ancestors to our people. All the names we mentioned today, and so he goes down there and At that time, the white supremacists had, were trying to intimidate the NAACP from doing this voter registration work. And when SNCC came, that even made it, worse. But Amzie Moore, excuse me, I said Amzie Moore, E.W. Steptoe was known to like, look, I'm gonna deal with these folks by to any means. And he would, like, apparently when you come to his house, him and his sons would have a little protective group around the house. They would you had to know they had to know you were coming, if you will. And but he would be it would get to the point though with Amzie Moore, because Amzie Moore, knowing the reality of that situation, he was always armed. And they kind of felt him and Bob Moses would debate all the time about Mr. Steptoe should be armed or not. Finally, Mr. Steptoe just didn't argue with him. He said, okay, but he was always still armed. Even when he went to the United States Congress to testify, they said, Mr. Steptoe, please leave your guns.
Right. I was cracking up.
But another thing was, one time he was arrested. They did a mass arrest in Jackson. He was at a demonstration. And the cop didn't know that he had a hat on and had a gun sitting up under his hat. So he just, again, and it's different if you see a picture of Amzie Moore. I meant to describe him as being this real big man. E.W. Steptoe was a smaller brother, smaller frame, very wiry. But you're basically talking about people who he lived from agriculture. There goes his picture. He actually looks like one of my uncles.
So Patrick said he reminds him of my father. That's kind of what my father looked like, a small statured man, but
right.
Yeah.
Right. And now we've only talked about men. There was a couple of women I like to talk about.
Okay.
One woman was named Janie Brewer. She lived in Tallahatchie County, and a younger sister, younger at that time, went to her county, Tallahatchie County, to begin to register folks to vote, and she was from Cleveland. She comes to the Tallahatchie County to register Black people to vote. This was in January '64, but there were so many death threats on her that she had to leave town. She comes back and she begins to organize, and she organizes well enough where SNCC decides to send her some other people to assist with the voter registration effort. And as an audience might not know, at that time, you would get enough people who were brave enough to go down to the county courthouse and register to vote. It ain't like today. Like, you could register at your bank, the store,
right.
Library, several different places now. But it was all at the county courthouse for these folks during that time. When they got down there, they were harassed and attacked by white supremacists. And they followed them all the way back to the home of Mrs. Janie Brewer, who was 86 years old. Was owned a lot of land. She was a widow, had children and grandchildren living on the land, and they were harassed by these people for a few days. So she encouraged them to go back, but she had a plan. When they went back and they came back to her property, she had Black people on both sides of the road with shotguns and rifles. The white supremacists didn't come to fight toe to toe. They took off. She knew they were coming back at night. When they came back that evening, she had a plan. She put her children and grandchildren in the cotton fields waiting for them. They put some of the nonviolent folks, they gave them guns, put them in the cotton fields. They said, you got to be what we are tonight. And then she was in the house with two young women making Molotov cocktails. That's when you gasoline in a bottle.
Yeah.
Like, don't try this at home, young people. You light the rag and you could use it as a firebomb. And so the night riders came and they flashed this big floodlight on them. And we're talking about Tallahatchie County in the country. Ain't no street lights.
Right. It's pitch black.
Disorients them. Then her family comes out with the guns, and then she comes out and throws that Molotov cocktail. Them crackers got the hell out of there.
I know they did. They did come back, did they?
No, they didn't come back. So, again, this is a grandmother. So you have men and women involved in the protection of our communities. Some families would take turns at night.
Right.
Some people would go and patrol the neighborhood, whereas you would have others, and teenagers would sometimes be involved in this too, the protection of our communities. One of the things, we're going through this thing now in Atlanta. I'm not sure about what y'all going through in Mississippi, but it's so much homicide occurring with people with weapons because of lack of consciousness, lack of value for life, lack of direction and organization in our community. But during that time, if I learned how to use the weapon, it was through a process of rites of passage that the elders in our community taught me how to shoot, and they taught me the value for life. And they, either for hunting or defending our communities, young sisters were taught how to use weapons to protect themselves from white rapists, which we know is very much a reality for our people, and particularly during that time. And so, but now it's because of the disorganization in our community. It's people are getting weapons in a more criminalized mentality and not in a sense of protection of our communities, protection of our elders, protection of our institutions, things of that nature. And so I think it's incumbent upon us at this particular moment. And again, I don't know about Mississippi, but if you come to Atlanta, it's a lot of confusion around that. But we got to begin to organize our community. Well, y'all doing that. That's what the Shea Academy, that's what the Black Liberation Movement is about. It's not only organizing people where you're at, but organizing us everywhere.
Right. And I was just going to say that, when the brothers were in Gulfport, that was one of the things that they did. They were at the home of the mother of the young man that was shot and killed, and they were in the community. And they, Brother Patrick, told the story a couple weeks ago on his live broadcast about the brothers going down there protecting her home. And then you had some other brothers there that was considered that their territory. So you kind of had to have this conversation and say, hey, we here to defend this sister. So, just having that presence, that Black man presence, that armed presence, sisters too. There were sisters there as well. But having
I'm sure
these
I've seen some bad sisters in Mississippi.
Yeah. And in Texas and Oklahoma, Alabama, as well. So just having those conversations and creating that warrior class that we need, that redirect that energy and redirect that focus.
No doubt. And it's important. Like, if people felt it was their territory, then they should have had it, and y'all could have just been backup. So they got to really make it their territory, you know what I'm saying? And so I think, but it's about us. I think a large part, we do have, I don't like to use the term gang, we do have street forces.
Right, street organizations.
We do have street organizations. And in fact, I remember when I was at y'all conference, y'all had the GDs on the panel. And so we need to, those forces, they're already a natural warrior class. But what's important is for us to have these conversations between revolutionary and nationalists, Pan-Africanists, and Muslim, whatever communities we have, be in touch with those street forces, and that I think one of the things I was impressed with what I saw the Black Liberation was doing. You're also talking about economic development, and
Mm-hmm.
so those street organizations, I think, need to get involved in some of the economic development and educational programs and cultural programs to uplift our youth. A lot of them have more contact with our youth than many of our other organizations do. And so, again, if we had them, that's the army right there. That's all I got to
Right.
say on that.
Right.
Street forces did in the movement that occurred in the 60s and 70s in the state of Mississippi. They were the ones who actually enforced the boycotts, those street forces. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, we got a comment from Brother Patrick. He said, "How do you feel about the strategic alignment of the Black Liberation Movement with the Elder Geronimo Pratt Club, Gun Club, to organize and unite under our Second Amendment rights?"
Well, I'll say this, man, saying that name, he's one of my elders. He's one of my ancestors. I call him Geronimo G. Jaga. That was what he wished to be called by. Um, and actually, he's from Morgan City, Louisiana, and was a vet and trained not only people in the Black Panther movement, but other organizations in self-defense. I've heard Brother Patrick speak about this on his Facebook Live. And one of the things I like when he talked about the alliance is he mentioned that the Black Liberation Movement, and I think you told me, is Mississippi on the Move, Sister Crystal.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's not necessarily a military formation, but but it's aligned with military formations, right? And paramilitary, self-defense oriented groups. I think that's how we got to move. Everybody is not going to be a soldier, even though I do believe as much as possible we need to have, as Tupac used to say, we need to be military minded. But
Mm-hmm.
everybody, you mentioned, Sister Crystal, you said a warrior class. We're gonna have some people who focus on that. That's gonna be the work, like the deacons of defense work. But everybody needs to be involved in this movement on some level.
Agree.
Bill Scott Heron used to talk about we can't all do everything, but we can all do something. And so we
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to contribute. If contributing means I'm not going to shop certain places and I'm going to shop other places. If that's just your level of commitment, we need that commitment.
Right.
Your commitment might be that, hey, I can't come every Saturday to the Ashe Academy, but I'm gonna donate some books. I'm gonna donate some money to what they're trying to do. Um, but it could be, hey, I want to be part of a self-defense group because we need our communities protected. It's not just enough for one person to know how to shoot. That's the beginning, but we need to have it where you know the people know how to protect our neighborhoods, our families, our institutions, because this things are moving fast, and we don't
Yes.
know which things are going to go on. We can't rely. Some of the people that some of us think we were relying on for security, that they the problem. you
Exactly.
know, they the problem. We
And
can't
we
rely on.
and I was
So
telling you about Kimmy Coffee. In
yes,
the past Tuesday, they had an event. Well, we had an event, breakfast with badges, and so the police officers of Senatobia, the fire department, were there to speak to the community at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. So you know what that intent was. However, they weren't expecting me, Brother Patrick, Sister Simone, Brother Freddie, Brother Jahi to be on code. And we confronted them with the issues that concern our community. You know, y'all don't protect us, y'all terrorize us. And so, you know,
Mm,
having those conversations and putting them, making them aware that, hey, all of us know. Some, I mean, all of us ain't going. A lot of us know. And one of my points to them was, we, when we start working in our community, leave us alone and let us do it. You know,
mm.
don't come in there and try to monitor it and take it over, because you don't have the trust of the community, and you know you don't, and you know why. So I
Right.
just wanted to speak to that, because Mississippi on the Move is, you know, that's the goal is to do the civic education, to make our people aware that we have to hold our people accountable. We have to select who we want to elect, you know, as well, and hold them accountable to the Black
That's right.
community, especially in Black spaces, in Black townships.
Yeah, you mentioned Baba Shokwe Lumumba, and that's the whole thing that was implemented when he first ran for city council, and then when he ran for mayor, was a people's assembly to hold officials accountable. And some he actually, when this people's assembly was created first in his ward and citywide, he took his political direction from the people's assembly, and that's what he made his policies decisions based upon what the community decided. And so, you know, that was a different model for us. Um,
Mhm.
I see my student Dante Stoudemire
Yes,
said
I want to highlight that.
there were armed academics involved in the movement as well. The ones I know about is actually in Atlanta. Dante was my student here. Now he's getting his PhD at University of Illinois. There's no success without successes. But anyway, um, in Atlanta during the 1906 racial massacre, W.B. Du Bois was sitting on his porch with a rifle. John Hope, who was the president of Atlanta Baptist College, which is today known as Morehouse College, he had an armed group that protected the grounds of the campus during that particular time. Today, I don't know about any groups of armed academics, but I do encourage people, particularly here in Atlanta, to support the National African American Gun Owners Association, which trains Black folks in the proper use of arms, as well as the proper consciousness of that. And so, you know, I think, let me see,
This
is
is
that,
what Brother Nick Bezel.
oh, this is
Mhm.
Brother Bessel, yeah,
Yeah,
of the El Geronimo Pratt group.
right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I saw again. I seen him on the
Brother
pizza.
Patrick.
I have the pleasure of meeting him.
Oh,
I met
okay.
him one on one.
Okay. Yes, we have quite a few people on. We got Sister Mila on, got
Yeah,
Brother
see my
Nick.
Facebook friend.
Yes, Brother Malik from Greenville. He said red, white, and Greenville. Well, I mean red, black, and Greenville.
I love it. I love
Yeah. Uh
it.
Sister Nkechi.
And Kichi
Uh
Taifa,
Nkechi.
you
Okay,
need to have
yeah.
her on. She wrote the book Black Power, Black Lawyer, and she's one of
Oh,
the leading reparations advocate activists in the world. I'll say that. I was about to
okay.
say in the country, in the world. But
Right.
Sister Keisha, she and I same age cohort, and we've been kind of twins in this movement for decades.
Cool. Well, I definitely need
She's
to link
one of
up
the
with her.
founders of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. So
Okay. Yeah.
definitely have her on to talk about her book. And she got Sister Crystal. She got some children's books too. Some of her
Oh,
children's books have
I
been banned,
definitely will. Definitely, sister,
but
we need to.
I find her children's books for myself. I like some of the
Oh,
poetry she has in them. Shine
yeah.
Legacy. It has, you know, stories on Denmark Feast, on the Haitian Revolution,
Yes.
stuff like that.
Oh,
Yeah, Sister
yeah.
Keisha is, you know, one of our leaders, and teachers, as well as she's an attorney too.
Okay. Yes. And I'm always looking for, people with skill sets to introduce our scholars to introduce our children to as well, so they can kind of tell us what they do, why they do it, who they do it for, and all that. So the inspiration and all that we need, our children need to see it. They need that imagery for sure. And Brother
Yes.
Patrick is on. So
Oh, no, most definitely. Most definitely. So yeah,
yeah.
have her down. Maybe she could be a guest for the next Black the Power
Sure.
Summit. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely. Definitely. And I was saying Brother Patrick is on as well. So,
And now you talk
yeah.
about a dynamic speaker. I always
Is she?
hope I go before her if I'm on the panel. So dynamic.
Wow.
So
Well, I'm looking
before
forward
you.
to meeting her. Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, Brother Zai said need some of those children's books. Can't wait till you have her on, Sister Crystal. So we definitely gonna have to link up and get you on, sis. So we can talk about it, and we can get our people to know who you are, because not just as a lawyer but as an author as well. So yeah,
Lawyer,
we got
author,
to we got to
organizer.
hmm There was one more person I wanted you to talk about, Bob,
Go ahead.
and that is Eddie Noel. uh,
Woo!
because I was
Woo!
looking him up some time ago, and he was referenced as the Black Rambo. So
Ah, Eddie Noel was for those who don't know that name, he was a brother living in Holmes County, Mississippi. Holmes County, another Black majority county. That's why, again, that's probably why my elder said Mississippi is a holy land too,
mhm,
because we had a majority there, just like in South Carolina. I think we might have one now, but they might be lying to us about the data. But anyway, we do have so many counties that are
mhm,
majority Black.
right.
But he was there, and then white guy said something that he felt was disrespectful to his wife, and they got into a conflict, and he took the guy out,
Mhm,
and in other words, he shot and killed him. So a mob came to his house to kill him, and he was a sharpshooter. They said that he could. His wife could. The legend is his wife could put a match in her mouth, and he could shoot and light the match without harming his wife.
right.
So he was a sharpshooter, and he came back to his house. He had all his weapons, but I think he ambushed them because he knew they were coming, and he
Mhm,
took out a bunch of them. He goes off into the woods, and they are pursuing him in the woods, but he's in there using guerrilla warfare.
mhm,
They actually had to where they finally get him out, and there's a backstory to this that I don't know if I put in the book, but because it was getting embarrassing to them,
right. And they were afraid.
yeah, we think they're afraid on one level, when we think about it on this level. What does that say to other Black people? That just
Mhm,
one Black man is taking out all these white folks. So, and I think they put pressure on his family, but they basically negotiated for him to come out, and they put him in a crazy house. I forgot where that's called in out there in Rankin County. I forgot what it's called. But here's a backstory to that, and just show you how crazy thing is. He actually was related by blood, and I don't think I put this in the book. I found this out, I think maybe after the book came out. He was related to one of the governors of Mississippi, white man.
mm, mm,
And so, part of the negotiations was happening there, since
yeah,
because how that
yeah.
happens. That
Mhm,
they had some Black relatives. This is in the 1950s, and so
yeah.
he was put in a crazy house rather than going to prison, rather than getting the death penalty, rather than being lynched. And then I forgot how much time he was in there, but eventually moved to Chicago and lived the rest of his life there. That type of
Wow.
stuff happened. Um, but there's a governor of Mississippi who also has a last name of Noel, but they really didn't talk about it that much. But one of the Whitfield is a place. Thank you. One of the reporters for the Jackson Advocate got that information. I think some of the people in Holmes County I talked to were able to give me the backstory to that too. But I didn't have
Those,
the corroboration at the time, so I didn't put it in there.
okay. Okay. Those backstories, I talked to my uncle. He's 95 when I go to Arkansas. And, we tend to forget that our elders have these stories that make all the difference in the world, because he told me that our family came from Natchez. And
Ah,
some of those stories of how people ended up in different parts of the country was because they fought back. And
oh
that's what
no.
happened.
But I told you about my daddy's side of the family. My mother's side of the family, they were in Louisiana. And my grandfather and his brother got into it with some white folks there. They moved to Oklahoma after, the interchange.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he had to leave Oklahoma for bootlegging. That was different. But no, that happens. We had a conference, I mentioned 1906 racial massacre in Atlanta. And during that time, the first day they white supremacists surprised black people. The second and third day, as they tried to invade black communities, black people were ready. They called town the
Mm-hmm.
first day. Second and third day, they tried to invade our communities. And there was one community, the Brownsville community, where a black man who was the first black postmaster in Atlanta, he had an arsenal, armed his community. And so when they came in there, they actually shot and killed a white cop who was leading the mob. But they came back with a tank and arrested like 120 brothers. One brother was finally convicted. He was put in prison in the state prison in Milledgeville, but he escapes. And nobody knew what happened to him. He disappeared off the
Mm-hmm.
historical record. His grandchildren, we had the centennial of the 1906 massacre. His grandchildren came and told the story, told how he
Mm-hmm.
escaped, went to Alabama and went to Chicago. So,
Wow.
a lot of us, I think, well, that's something I want to pursue. I haven't pursued.
Mm-hmm.
Is I would like to do a book that really looks at, our stories of
Yeah.
resistance, fighting back, because I think a lot of our families have these stories, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't talk about them. I
Right.
think there was a certain point that I think it was best to keep things secret, and a lot of our elders died with some of these stories. But I want
Right.
to record some of them so that the children at Shea Academy, our grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
other children will know these stories because they're a part of who we are. Our
Definitely.
people always resisted and fought back. Uh, Mississippi has a lot of those stories. Louisiana has a lot of those stories. Rural Georgia has a lot of those stories. You know what I mean? South
Mm-hmm.
Carolina. We also had, we don't talk about how during slavery, the period of enslavement, a lot of our ancestors escaped and ran away and formed their own communities. And,
Right.
they call them in other places maroons or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we always had resistance groups in our community, always. Thank
Always.
you. Luther Price is the name of the brother who was the first black postmaster in Atlanta. Recently, the community is put up a historic marker at his house and things of that nature. Uh, so no, we got that from the day one. Now here's the thing too. Usually we talk about like 1619 is where our people began here, right? But 1526 was the first Africans, enslaved Africans, that were brought to what we call North America today, brought to first to South Carolina, then they were in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Those people resisted, aligned themselves with the First Nations, the indigenous folk, right, the so-called Indians, and they fought against the Spanish and ran them off. That's the first time we were here. So
Okay.
again, I think we have to begin our history with understanding that our people started with resistance and we
I
won.
say. I say. I say definitely. I want to read this comment because Brother Patrick said that Baba uh Shabaka Jajiga sends his greetings from Bahia, and he said send him a copy of the book in Black Power.
Okay, brother. All my friends be hurt my pocket, but I remember I got a family and grandkids too. But anyway,
Right.
Bahia, brother, and Baba Shabaka's been a long time freedom fighter. But Baha'ias also were the first successful boycott of the United League took place. The brother Skip Robinson and them organized. Um, so we want to give a shout out to Bahia. I never been there, but I met the brother who was the main organizer from there.
I haven't been there, but when I was reading, uh, some of these events took place in 1978. People, that's not that long ago.
It's
So if
not
you were
that long
born in
ago.
1978, you're 44.
Right.
So let that register. That's when the United League is Bob Skip Robinson. They were very active in the 70s. And so that's just to put this in context.
That's important too. People usually think, okay, they and Stephen had seen some people write, so-called scholars, right? After 65, the Voting Rights Act, like the struggle's over. And no, it was still some people rumbling. One author I may comment on in the book says that there was no longer need for self-defense groups.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you were telling me before the show that, and you mentioned during the show that, you all had to go down to where? To
Go
the
for it.
Gulfport, Mississippi. These people still killing us, trying to kill us. Still a need for Black people to defend ourselves. And so I think this author said in 67, after that, it was no longer need. The only thing we were doing is Black men wanted, we were so insecure psychologically, we needed that. These people were trying to kill us.
Right.
Ain't about that, And so when you had groups in one of the things I argue is you got these groups in the 70s after the Voting Rights Act and all that, and the federal government's supposed to be having our back, but they didn't have our back, just like they didn't have it in the 50s and 60s or during Reconstruction. So we have to rely on ourselves. I remember somebody posted self-determination. We got to
Mm-hmm.
depend upon our own resources. We just have to protect ourselves,
That
defend
coochie
ourselves. We
chocolate.
have to
Mm-hmm.
coochie chocolate of self-determination.
And
And that's to the cooperative economics too, right?
right, right.
All of that,
And
all those and Saba are tied together.
right, right. In the book you mentioned Baba Sar Sarsesh Boxley and
Yes,
Natchez.
yes.
And we had the opportunity to meet this great Baba, and he directed us to the documentary. I think it's The Awakening or the Unrest in Natchez.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And one of
yeah,
the things,
yeah.
and I was just gonna say, one of the things that I love so much was the Deacons of Defense. They made sure that we did not go in those businesses that were being boycotted.
Yeah.
So they were
But
more than just.
actually,
Mhm.
that's what I was mentioning. The deacons, their job was protection, but you would have maybe the street forces that we talked about earlier, the so-called gangs and young brothers, people we call thugs today, or whatever. Their job was to make sure people didn't shop in the stores that were designated. The name they generally called for them in the movement, and even some of the people in United League would use this name, was the spirit. And they
Mm.
said you didn't want to visit from the spirit if you've been shopping in them stores. So they were organized by a brother by the name of Rudy Shields, who was also a deacon. You know what I mean? So, but that was in some boycotts in places like Port Gibson or Natchez, Crystal Springs. They had the deacons and they would have the spirit. In Yazoo
Okay.
City, they just had the spirit and they did both roles.
Mm.
It was a little bit different. And then in Aberdeen and West Point, they had something called the Black United Front. So,
Wow.
different names, but some of the same methods and tactics
Right.
in terms
Right.
of boycotting. And so us not shopping and withdrawing our money, on our business from these racist institutions was another key thing, as well as doing our own economic development, you know, our own
Right.
cooperative economic development. So yeah, so the deacons, but the deacons were more like they're protecting the community, they're protecting the elders. And the way the role was explained to me is the deacons tended to be like adult men, mature men, and they were generally people who might have grew up together, went to church together, were in Masonic lodges and things like that together. So they knew and trusted each other. You didn't just recruit people off the street, right? But the other group was usually the younger people, because if somebody at the store and and you said, look, so and so was shopping, and it might be somebody grandmama or something, some brother been going to church and stuff, he might not have the heart to go ahead and snatch
Right.
that merchandise. But young folks don't care. so so they had different responsibilities. But
Right.
of course, boycotts took sometimes different groups. For instance, sometimes they would get, if you had to punish a young woman they would get young women to do it. Sometimes it just might be they're gonna call your phone all night to keep you up or something like that. But it was some way to let the community let you know that what you were doing ain't cool. And the boycotts were generally successful.
Right. Right.
Unfortunately, you got individualism in the community too, and some people saying, "Hey, I know, I'm gonna go. I don't ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do."
Is it?
so, so you gotta have
Woo!
some accountability,
Somebody telling you, but you just don't want us to tell you.
right?
Somebody
Top.
telling you. Yes. Well, I just want to say, yeah, we could go on and on with this conversation because the book, and I will be transparent and honest that I didn't finish it, but I'm almost done.
Hey, you working on it? In some of them names you mentioned, you couldn't. They're not like they have them on TV every week.
Right, right. Because look, I was reading and looking up because I wanted to see what they look like. I'm like, I've got to find some images, some pictures of some of these ancestors that you were speaking of and talking about in the book. And then I wanted to add some of them to our calendar too. Uh,
Ah,
we print a calendar every year with significant dates on it and people, places, events. And so some of them I was looking up born days to add to our
ah.
calendar as
Look
well.
at the
So,
Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission. They probably have a lot of that data, birthdays and
okay.
stuff. It's in
Okay.
the Mississippi State Archives because they did surveillance and all that stuff on these people.
Ooh. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Because I did
So yeah,
find the
I'll send you information on if you can't have trouble locating it. I'll help you
okay.
with it.
Okay. Well, can you give um the audience, the viewers, the information on how to get this book? Because we have had a couple comments about I gotta get this book, where is the link to order the book and all that. So
Yeah,
can you give us the
let me
information?
see. Yeah, I would order it from NYU Press,
Okay.
nyupress.edu.
I'll put that in.
You could
NYU.
also or order from Amazon, but if you got a black bookstore in your community, have them order it.
Okay. And I
So,
was gonna look online because there's a sister that I know that has a online African bookstore, African Consciousness. check on there as well. I'll drop the link after broadcast. But
And tell her if
yeah,
she needs any information for me to help her negotiate it out, get in touch with me.
okay. Okay. And I also want to make you all aware of the Black Power Encyclopedia as well. So this is a great resource if you homeschool. I see Bob Obafemi from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Woo, is so Bob Obafemi, this would be great for the Sankofa Institute as well. And just as a parent, because he hey, there's a lot of information in here as well. We haven't used it yet, but I'm thinking of an assignment for our scholars so that they can start using this as well, Bob.
And actually, next month, uh, there'll be another publication. It will be online on Dr. Matulu Shakur,
Mm,
political prisoner who's been finally won compassionate release. It'll probably be coming out right around the time he's released from federal captivity. And so we're also raising funds for him. So if you want to contribute to his medical situation, go to matulushakur.com, matulushakur.com to donate to him.
okay. Do you have any special closing remarks or anything that you want to add, Baba?
Well, one other thing is, those you know me know my family's involved in a school here in Atlanta, the Colombo Academic and Cultural Institute African Center School. And we're doing a fundraising for them this week called Educate to Liberate. So look up Educate to Liberate online and check us out. But I just say, my friend Shokwe Lumumba used to always say that our people were in a war. The problem is we're not at war. And we have to begin to have the consciousness to see what's happening to us at this critical moment in time. And that's what's different from us in the generations I talk about in the book, that they were conscious of their reality. They put Tulu Shakur as Muatulu, not M-A. There
Is
you
that
go.
right?
Thank you. Yeah, that's right now. Thank you, Baba Obafemi. And so we just got to be at war. And being at war doesn't mean everybody is not going to be a part of the warrior class. We all really are part of the warrior class, but everybody's not going to be military in that way. But we
Right.
do have to be conscious. One of the things I was impressed by when I went into the center where the Shape Academy exists for a Black liberation movement is you listed different things that we need to be aware of and need to be doing, whether that's how we shop, whether it is how we teach our children, whether it is how we in relationship with one another.
Right.
All these things are important, and we got to also, as we learn how to defend and protect our communities, we got to also learn and make sure we're not doing harm to each other in our community, and develop the type of relationships that's going to make us stronger as a people. If we're a strong people, then we're going to be free. No way they're going to be able to hold us down.
No doubt.
So that's what I was saying closing. And, to my brothers and sisters a part of the New African Independence Movement, I'd also like to say freedom, and we need some territory. We get extended into some land. I still believe that. I don't see any other way. I don't. Mr. Crystal, you mentioned assimilation. These people ain't trying to let us assimilate, and if they do, we're not going to be free, equal, and healthy. We need our own stuff. You know what I mean? We need to be self-determined. We need to be able to control our own reality, control the development of our children, and be able to protect and build for ourselves. So I want to thank y'all for having me on. Y'all doing good work.
Thank you.
I like that y'all using, and when I say y'all, the Black Liberation Movement, Mississippi Black Liberation Movement, is utilizes these platforms, because that way, even when there's not a Black Power Summit going, I still call it Black Power Summit, but even though it's not a Power Summit going on, I can still plug in and find out what's happening. And so I really appreciate y'all utilizing this medium, and as well as the work you're doing there in the northern Mississippi and the Mississippi Delta in Memphis metropolitan district. So just on that, close with saying free the land. And
Asante Sana for coming on. And I just want to say December 19th, I think, is the date I'll be on, and we'll be talking about Kwanzaa. So we gotta y'all, because everywhere you look in September we see Christmas, and I'm not a big I don't do it. The commercialization of it is unreal, but we need to start bringing attention to our culture. And so we'll be talking about Kwanzaa, because we have a special event coming up at Kimmy Coffee to celebrate Kwanzaa as well. So again, Asante Sana to all who joined in on the conversation tonight, and it was more than I expected. I feel full, and I feel inspired and determined to stay the course, Baba. Asante Sana.
Sakitu.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Peace and power.